And then he and Pat have also written a book together called What's Next for You? And it talks about pathways and making decisions. So that's all I'm going to say at this point. I just want to welcome Bob and thank Bob for everything that he's done. And Bob, if you would come up, we would like to present you with this plaque in recognition and thanks for everything he's done. Bob Gussin, the award is presented in recognition of outstanding achievements. And as a teacher, because he's been a mentor for many people, including Ray Ludden, who took over at J&J when Bob stepped down, research and administration. So Bob, congratulations. So Bob's going to tell us about the road less traveled.
Thank you. That's a tough act to follow, probably given all the things I've said up myself. Yeah, I really been talking primarily today to the younger people, the students and the postdocs, and everybody else. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about our post-retirement activities. We had a great time with the publishing business. We published mystery, thriller, suspense. That's a New York Times best-selling author of mystery, thriller, suspense, so you can understand how we sort of work our way into that. But that's after a long career. He's a physician, scientist, researcher, ran a big piece of the J&J organization as well. So anyway, what I want to talk about, I felt the road less traveled, but really sort of road stumbled to me, which is what I did. And I'm going to go back in the beginning of this. The takeaway I would like the students and postdocs to have is that as you sit here today, you can't possibly imagine where your career may lead. The opportunities are incredible. There's really no limit. You'll see, I could never believe where I ended up. When I look back on my career, and I wouldn't say along the way and now, I got paid for my hobby. I wouldn't have done it if I could afford it. I wouldn't have done it without pay. That's how much fun it was. And so you're going to go out of Michigan with an incredible background, with a whole lot of contacts, people you meet here will be friends of yours for the rest of your life, and the contacts you can't even judge how important they will be as you go through your career. You never know where that's going to become important, but it will. So that's really the message, and you'll see that I had no idea that I would achieve anything when I got here. First of all, let me just go way back. I grew up in rural western Pennsylvania, a steel mill, coal mining town. And at the time I was growing up, from our high school, probably 10% of the students went on to college. The rest went to work in the steel mill. The women became secretaries, got married, and had a family very quickly. The school system was not very good. So when I got finished with 12 years of school, I didn't want to go any further. That was it for me. I had it, elementary and secondary school. Told my parents I didn't want to go to college. Neither were college graduates. My dad was a laborer, my mother was a homemaker. But they were very education oriented. And my dad made it very clear. So you've got three choices. You can go work in a steel mill. You can go to the service, which at that time were late in the Korean War. That didn't seem to be too attractive. Or you can go to college. And so out of those choices, college seemed to be the best. So I gave in. And then I thought, what am I going to take? Because the few kids that were going on to college, especially the boys, were going into engineering. And I didn't like math, I didn't like science, I'd like anything. What could I take? And the only piece that I had judged what I would do is 4 years was max. I'm not going to take anything that takes any more than 4 years, that's it. So I was trying to figure out what to do. One night I was loafing around with a bunch of my friends in front of a pharmacy. I happened to look up and I see a guy with a white coat. He's handing the woman a bottle pills. Well, that looks clean and easy. And, in fact, I don't know anything. It won't matter because if I go to school, I'll learn about medicine. It seems like a good place. start without any background. So I went in and I asked the pharmacist one question. I said, excuse me, how long did you go to school? He said, 4 years. He said, are you thinking of going first? Yep, now I am. He said, well, you know, stay in touch. If you go, he said, you know, stop by, maybe you can work here. So I went out. I had a friend who was at Duquesne. He was a year ahead of me. He was second year at Duquesne University. And I said, would you print me an application form? He brought me one. I filled it out, went to school, sent it in. Never looked at anything. Never looked at the bullet, never looked at curriculum, nothing. Sent it in, got accepted. And since it was a block schedule, you didn't have to pick your courses. You didn't have to show up until the day before school started. But I had to put a deposit of $200. And at that time, and now you're talking dark ages, it was about $9 a credit. So $200 covered a semester. And you could actually work a summer and earn enough to go to college, which unfortunately you can't do anymore. But that's how I got through. So anyway, you know, I get accepted 4 years. I don't have to know anything going in, which is great. So I showed up the day before. I got my schedule, biology, chemistry, physics. Oh my God, I would have quit. And I thought, well, I got $200 in here that's non-refundable. You can't quit. So I started, and I struggled through pharmacy for a couple of years. And one of the requirements in pharmacy school at that time was that you had to work in pharmacy so many hours a year. So I got a job in retail and I got a job in the hospital, a few hours here and there. And I started working. And by the time I got to be a junior, I remember this, I got particularly stimulated when I was taking quantitative analysis because it was so damn tough to be in. I thought, what am I doing? I go to work in this pharmacy, you know, I get a prescription, I go take the bottle off the shelf, pour it into a little thing, count out pills, pour it in, they can stick a label and hand it to the patient, customer, and that's fine. I could do that when I started. I mean, I was out of high school. I was doing what I'm going to be doing the rest of my life here, and yet I'm taking all these tough courses. So I went to the dean and I said, excuse me, Dr. Adams, but I don't think I want to be a pharmacist. What do you want to do? You want to go to medical school? First of all, medical school takes, you know, another 4 years. Secondly, I grew up in this little town and I only know one doctor there, and my impression is he treats measles, whooping cough, chickenpox. That doesn't seem very exciting to me. So I don't want to be a doctor, and I don't have the money to go around there. He said, well, what do you think you like? I said, well, at the hospital, I got involved with a couple of the residents who were doing a research project. I'm supplying the drug use project. And I find that pretty interesting. We talk about these. You're going to love pharmacology. So you take it when you're a senior. And so he said, I'll tell you what, he said, if you get your grades up, and you have a good rest of the junior and senior year, you can come into my master's degree program in pharmacology. He was the dean of pharmacy school. He was the only pharmacologist. He was the pharmacology department. And he was a graduate. He got his PhD at the University of Illinois Medical School. And I think John Adams was real new with it, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, you know, sounds like better than any other possibility at this point. Two-year master's program. So I did better. I matured a bit, did better with my grades, and I got accepted. Myself and Tony Dran, who also turned out to be a graduate of this program in Michigan, were the only two pharmacology students Dr. Adams' program. So we were teaching assistantships, and we got $1,200 a year. We taught in the pharmacology course. So all this experience, at the time I didn't particularly appreciate it, but all that teaching experience, I mean, plus we took care of the animals. We used them, so we had to be the caretakers. All 7 days a week, we had to feed them, we had to clean them, and all that stuff. So, and we had to take courses, and we had a master's thesis. So it was a pretty tough 2 years. And once again, I didn't pay too much attention to what was going on. And about 3 months before we were finishing, I went, I said, look at Dean Adams. Now, when I get this master's degree, what can I do? What kind of job can I get? And I said to him earlier that I liked Pittsburgh. I didn't want to move. I thought I was so provincial. I just stay here. He goes, well, tell you the truth, you want to stay in Pittsburgh, there isn't a job. I got through 2 years, and you tell me I can't do it. Well, he said, you know, with a master's degree, most of the jobs are in the pharmaceutical industry. So if you want to move to New Jersey or New York, you probably get a job there. But I'm going to tell you something. Even if you do that, you probably never run a program because most people don't have PhDs. So he said, you should go get a PhD. And I've already talked to Klaus Ullman, who was the chairman of Illinois, his mentor, John Adams. He said, and he's very interested in you and Tony coming out there. He said, but you gotta understand something, it's a medical school. Pharmacology is a medical science, not a pharmaceutical science. So it'll probably take you at least another 4 years. 4 years, 2 years, another 4 years. But nothing much else I could do by that point. So Tony and I drove out to Illinois. Got interviewed by Klaus Ullman, who was a very dramatic guy, not much patience, and very formal, and never smiled. Took us through the department on tour. It took about 2.5 minutes. We had to run to keep up with him. Introduced us to a few people. Tony and I came out of there, and he goes, you know, fill out the application. And, you know, I know him. He'll probably be accepted. I've talked to John Adams, and you know, I'll see you in September. So he left. We were both very depressed. I don't like this place. Plus, it was in a bad part of town. At that time, you know, they'd say, don't walk across the street to the library by yourself at night. You gotta walk with people. And Pittsburgh at that point was a pretty safe city, so I didn't want to get into all that. So anyway, Tony and I are driving back. So we stayed overnight. Saturday morning, we're driving back to Pittsburgh, and we're both weak. I don't want to go to sleep. So Tony said, you know, Ann Arbor is not too far on the turnpike here. So you want to drive up and take a look at that. Sure, it's Saturday, and anything else to do. So we shoot up here. It turns out that Carl Hug, who was a student here, was 2 or 3 years ahead of Tony in the active game. And Tony had said, you know, Carl Hug's up there, maybe we can find him and see what pharmacology was like there. So we get to Ann Arbor. It's the first time I'd ever been on a big college campus. It was an awe, what a beautiful place. And plus, you know, we finally found a medical center, which was pretty impressive too. Worked our way through it. Eventually got to the Department of Pharmacology on the side of one. And we're walking down the hall, and lo and behold, we ran into Carl Hug coming out of the lab with his coat. Carl was surprised to see us, and we talked for a while. Excuse me. Carl said, well, I'll introduce you to the old man, Dr. Sievers. So we walked down the hall in Dr. Sievers' office, and go to Dottie Morton, see Dr. Sievers. He was very cordial, you know, how you doing? And sat down and, well, what are you doing? Oh, we're master's degree students at Duquesne in pharmacology. What are you working on? So we went about 15 minutes apiece, told him what our research programs were. And he said, well, what do you want to do now? Well, we want to go get a PhD. So where do you want to go? So, love to go here now. This is the difference in the acceptance. Most people said, okay. See Mrs. Norton out there, get an application, send it in, I'll see you in September. And that was it. That's how we got accepted. That's the process. That's good. Then another stumble. We got here, and in those days you didn't rotate. You picked a lab, and that's where you worked, unless you had a big issue and you wanted to change, but most of us didn't change. I was so naive that when I was at Duquesne, and John Adams was what, a neuro guy. So most of what we learned, Tony and I learned, were neuro things, and the lab setups he had us do were pretty much neuro-oriented. And I thought that, you know, as a pharmacologist, you should be pretty well rounded and understand everything. So I felt my big weakness was cardiovascular or renal. Excuse me. So anyway, I met with Don Bennett, who was in charge of the graduate program. We each had a one-on-one meeting. So I met with Bennett, and he said, now what areas are you interested in? And just by chance, and I was thinking, I really would like to work with the heart, you know, cardiovascular. I said, oh, renal or cardiovascular. You're the first person who said renal. We have an opening at the Fruity's lab, so we'll put you there. So I became a renal pharmacologist. That's how you make a decision about your career. But it turned out that was a pretty good choice because renal pharmacology is a small specialty. So very early on, and this was a pretty good hotbed because physiology had Walter Wild and Dick Melvin and Art Vander who had developed a new technology called stop flow. And I took that and adapted it in my studies with etheric acid and purines. And so it was a pretty hot area. And you could become sort of the big fish in a little pond, better than in some other areas. So very early on, I was giving talks in some of the national meetings and becoming fairly well established and had a number of publications. So when I was planning to leave here, I had a lot of contacts. And Charlie Ross, who was thank you, Colonel. Charlie Ross was a senior, fourth-year student when I was first-year student in his lab. And Kafruti, in that building, we had our labs on the 7th floor. The faculty offices were primarily on the 6th floor, which is what Kafruti was. And so he wasn't in the lab all that much, which was a mixed blessing. What happened was the senior student sort of managed the lab. And so when Charlie left after the first year, for 3 years, I sort of had that opportunity. We had technicians, a couple of med students, et cetera, and a couple of grad students. So I got a lot of management experience. Plus the fact that I had taught at Duquesne. Kafruti and I had a project that ended up being done at Bar Harbor, Maine, at the Mount Desert Research Laboratory. He went, I stayed here. He sent the samples back, I did the analysis, but he was gone for 2 summers. So I got to teach the nursing course in pharmacology, which for young single, that was pretty nice. So anyhow, I got a lot of teaching experience and management experience at the same time. Had a tremendous scientific background. And all these contacts that I met while I was here. And they were valuable all through my career. And so you got to appreciate that, and you also have to appreciate every kind of experience you get, because you never know what you can get into and how you will use that. So anyway, I was intended by that point on staying in academics. I liked it, and I thought I was a pretty good teacher. And Charlie had left and gone to Syracuse. I say he was upstate New York Center. Excuse me. He went as a postdoc and stayed on the faculty there. So when I finished, he was up there as an assistant prof. And he said, come on up here, because we got a lot of real stuff going on, and the chairman of the department was a real guy. So I went up there for a postdoc. And when I got there, I was postdocing for the chairman of the department, Alfred Farah, who was a renal guy. But Alfred was the department chair and had a lot of things going on, so he wasn't going to pay a whole lot of attention to my lab. So again, I had a management opportunity. But even more importantly, as it turned out, I did appreciate it at the time, but he said, you taught a lot, and we've got a few people on sabbatical. Would you mind carrying a teaching load, full teaching load, like any other faculty, as a postdoc? So I did that for a couple of years, and I really enjoyed it. And it became clear that I won't say expected to stay on, but it was sort of assumed that I would just stay on there as faculty, and that's the way I would continue to work. And I was happy to do that for the rest of my life. That was good. Anyway, toward the end of a couple of years, excuse me, I started getting a call from a headhunter who was looking for somebody to run the diuretic program at Letterly Laboratories. Now, Letterly, at that time, was a big pharmaceutical company. Eventually got swallowed up by, it was part of American Cyanide, an even bigger chemical company. It got swallowed up by American Home, got bought by Pfizer. It disappeared, no longer exists. But at that time, Letterly had discovered and developed the tetracycline antibiotics, so they were pretty well known. They also had developed the, thank you. They had also developed the oral polio vaccine and a number of other vaccines. So they were a fairly high-level research group for the industry. Now, the outlook on the industry at that time by academia was horrendous. I mean, industry had money, they had poor science. I mean, only second-rate scientists would go there. Certainly a graduate of this department would never go to a place like that. He'd stay in academia. And so I told them, the headhunters, no, I'm not interested. And he called me back again a couple of times. And by that time, and the faculty at Syracuse was a little different. And they were friends, and they said, look, and they had a reason for this. They said, why don't you go there? So you might like it, number one. Number two, even if you don't, a couple of years of experience would be great. And if you come back here then, which you certainly can, and we expect you would, you'll know something about the industry. And when we apply for industry grants, we'll know better how to do it. So you can bring back that knowledge in case it has a leg up in how you can do that. So I said, okay, I'll take a look. So I went, and I had to give a seminar first, honored interview. And unlike the department I was in, where if you gave a seminar, few people would come. The people in the next lab didn't care much about what I was doing, et cetera. But at Letterly, it was standing room only, because they were interested in the product. They wanted to know how they were going to get it. And if I could play a role and make that happen, they were interested. So it was a little different. Plus, when they talked to me, they said, well, you have 15 people in your group, and these are mostly master's degree people, and all kind of help. So it's not so bad. Picking up what help. So I tried out. So I took the job. Because of side effects and some toxicity, the diuretic that had the market was Diamox, which is the carbonic anhydrase inhibitor. And you probably know they're pretty good diuretics, but they play havoc with the acid-base balance, et cetera, so you end up acidotic and they stop being effective. So anyway, Merck had discovered the thiazins, the diaryl thiazin. He wiped out the Diamox market, so literally was without any piece of that market. So they wanted diuretics, and at that time the loop diuretics were coming along, and they knew I had worked on one of the two major loop diuretics. And so, to them, I looked like a pretty good prospect. So they hired me, and I ran that program and did the loop diuretic out of it and got some other products. And it was pretty interesting stuff. I was doing the kind of research I did here, and I did it at Syracuse. I was having a good time. I missed the students. That was the one shortcoming. But the technicians weren't undergrad students working for you who were just doing it to make some extra money. These were people who really knew what they were doing, so you had excellent technical help. And it was pretty exciting. So I was having a good time, still thinking I'll go back to academia. Then I got promoted and got the whole hypertension renal program. And then a couple of years later, they decided to organize in a disease therapy approach. And they formed a cardiovascular renal disease system, and they made me the head of it. So I had all the chemists, all the biologists, the biochemists, pharmacologists, et cetera. I didn't have toxicology, I didn't have clinical, that was all separate. But it was a pretty good group of almost 200 people, and had all, we were working on antiarrhythmics, we were working on antihypertensives, renal failure, diuretics, a whole bunch of stuff. It was pretty exciting work. And so I was having a great time. This is going to be the rest of my life. I was happy with it. And I was again, if I didn't get another call from a headhunter who said, we're interested in having you take a look at a job that we have the choice. Now, when I was a pharmacist, I worked with some products, and they were old barbiturates, butazole, things like that. And I thought, well, that's a smaller company. Literally, why would I go there? It didn't seem to have a good product line. He said, we'd like to talk to you. And I said, you may not know, but 6 months ago I got promoted. I have 200 people. He said, we know all that. He said, this is the executive director of research. He'd be responsible for all the discovery research, and you would have chemistry, biochemistry, pharmacology, and pharmaceutics, pharmaceutical development, all under you, about 400 people. So then I sort of total reversal in my mind and go, I'm not experienced enough for this job. So I said to the guy, I don't think I'm the right guy. I've only been doing one book for 6 months. He said, why don't you let us worry about that? So I went down, I interviewed, and because I never thought I would get it, I was totally relaxed. I mean, they said, how would you do this? I said, oh, I would change this and change that. So they were pretty impressed that I was willing to make some fairly sweeping changes in the way they ran things. And so one thing led to another. And then what happened is the VP of R&D said to me, at the end of the day, he said, I really like you. I think you're a good candidate. I want you to go through the next level of interviews. They named 3 people. And I go, George, I talked to you, you had research. I talked to the executive vice president, the president of this company. Who are these other people? He said, well, we're part of Johnson&Johnson. I said, you are? Yeah, we're part of Johnson&Johnson. biggest healthcare company in the world, you know, and they have to interview you too because they oversee what we do. Okay, that's a, same thing happened. I went through. I was pretty open about what I would do, and so I got the job. Long story short, and I had a wonderful experience. And for 3 or 4 years, I had that group, and the research was really very good. I mean, better than letter. It was a big secret, but it was good research going on there, so I was having a good time. And then I got promoted to Vice President of Research and Development, which took in addition to what I had, it took in clinical, and it took in science information, which was all the documentation for the Food and Drug Administration, all the libraries, et cetera, and eventually took in quality control as well. And that's why when we had the cyanide tampering issue, I had the quality control group. I was one of the first person here. We had people in Chicago who died from taking time up. And my first reaction was, how did it ever get in there? Did they even have it on this campus? I said, no, we didn't get in as contaminated. It got in by tampering. So that led to all the tamper-resistant stuff, which interestingly, at that same time, Tylenol had become such a big product that J&J decided to split McNeil Laboratories into McNeil Pharmaceutical and McNeil Consumer. And I said, well, I'm going to stay with pharmaceutical. That's when my interest. At that point, Pat decided to come out of her practice, and they offered her the equivalent job to mine at McNeil Consumer. So for a few years there, we were running the whole McNeil issue. So she got involved with all the tamper-resistant packaging. She had people drilling through packages here. They developed the gel cap, all that stuff because of the tampering issue. So she had a tremendous career in that line. While I went to the pharmaceutical group, we built a new facility in Springhouse, moved 5 miles away. So for us, it was great because she drove one way, I drove the other way. It was 5 miles from each of us. So it worked out real well until 1986, when Jim Burke, who was chairman of J&J, called up. I can remember the call. I was having a staff meeting. So the secretary of my store said, Dr. Cousins, Mr. Burke's on my back. Take a break. And I said, well, hi, Jim. He goes, hi, Bob, are you busy? I go, how are you going to tell you? The CEO of the corporation, no, I'm sitting here with my feet up on the desk. I said, well, yeah, I'm busy. I was having a staff meeting. And he said, could you come up here? And I'd like to talk to you. And I said, when? He said, well, now if you can. Okay, so I call off the staff meeting. It's an hour and a half drive up to New Brunswick, New Jersey. So I called Pat. I said, oh, I don't know what's going on, but Jim Burke wants to talk to me. I mean, there are a lot of people between Jim Burke and me that would fire me. I don't think he's asking me to come up to New Brunswick so I can get fired. He said, he's going to offer you the top job. I said, no, I don't want it. I don't want it up there in corporate. I like what I'm doing. I go, sure, Jack. He told me how he had this dream of what this job could be, and he had 2 other people that preceded me. The one he had, when he was getting rid of, he wanted to take a job. He said, it's an incredible opportunity. They went on. And he said, this is what I want you to do. And I said, well, Jim, I'm not sure I want to take it. He said, I love what I'm doing. I'm in the labs. I look at data all the time. I love hammering these products through, these through the products, fight with the FDA, whatever it takes. I'm enjoying that, and I think I'm good at it. He said, well, if you're good at it, that's why I'm talking to you. He said, that's why I'm here. So I said, let me think about it. So he said, okay, we're going to meet next Monday. It was Monday. He said, we'll meet next Monday, same time. I want you back up here. Fine, with a decision. So I go home. I said, you got the job? No, not exactly. He didn't offer you that job? Yeah, he did offer it to me, but I didn't take it. He goes, what? He said, are you crazy? I said, well, I told her the same thing I told him. And he said to me at that time, he said, you got to understand something. He said, you would be the top scientific person in the biggest healthcare company in the world. And this would open all kinds of doors. And you could do all kinds of things that your predecessors have not done. But I'm giving you the go-ahead. I want ties to universities. I want all this stuff. So telling Pat that, she said, you got to take it. She said, he's right. You can make a difference here. She said, the more that you've been there, done it with all the other stuff. Go do this. So I called up a couple of days later and said, tell him I'll take the job. He said, well, he still wants you up here Monday. So I went back the next Monday, and we spent a whole day. He loved science. That was a good student. We talked for like 7 hours. And he said to me, when I told him I was taking the job, he said, you really have to understand, this opens all kinds of doors. He said, let me ask you a question. He's a very philosophical guy. He said, what would you like to accomplish between now and when you retire? What's the biggest thing you'd like to accomplish? No, Jim, I'll tell you something. I said, it's always bothered me. I said, if you talk to anybody familiar with this industry, and you say, who are the best marketing companies in the world in the healthcare products area? You'll hear two names, Johnson&Johnson and Procter & Gamble. You say, who are the top research-based companies in this field? Your Pfizer, Lilly, Upjohn, whoever, never Johnson&Johnson. Johnson&Johnson to everybody was Band-Aids and baby oil. Most people didn't even know we had 180 companies in almost every area of medical research. So I said, what I would like to accomplish is by the time I retire, I would like J&J to be looked on as much for its research capabilities as it is for its marketing capabilities. So that was 1986, and a lot of what I did in between was built relationships with universities, built relationships within J&J, because one of the biggest problems is they didn't know it was very decentralized, and one company didn't know what another company was doing. And the opportunity to bring those together was incredible. In fact, I will say that Dr. Ray Rudden, single-handedly pretty much was responsible for Johnson&Johnson being in cancer stuff today, because when he arrived and he said to me, what are you doing in cancer? I said, we're not in cancer. And so he started looking, we had developed a new marketing erythropoietin, which is one of the top adjunctive therapies for cancer patients. Ethicon, all the wound closure stuff for oncological surgery, Ethicon endosurgery, all the instrumentation for minimally invasive surgery that was in large cases oncological. We had the company J&J Medical that developed all the bandages and dressings. So he said, you're in everything except chemotherapy, therapies. So, we should be in that. And we pulled together what we call a council on cancer and got the companies together and finally got Janssen and Leo and Northville, the pharmaceutical companies, to start to get into that. And today, that's a major franchise at J&J. I think Ray, without him, that probably would not happen. So, that was the kind of power that position gave me. And so, I took that job in 1986. The highlight, perhaps, of my career at J&J was 1996. We got the National Medal of Technology for a corporation, for our contributions worldwide to the health of the population worldwide, our research. And to me, that was a highlight. That was a recognition. And from then on, J&J's been looked at pretty much as a strong research corporation as well. So I was very proud of that. But it did open up tremendous doors. And I'll sort of end this talk with this part of it, at least, with the kinds of things it got me into. And I say this not to be my own drum, but it just shows you you never know what opportunities are going to come up for you when you sit in this room. But I chaired the National Academy of Sciences National Research Council Academic Industry Advisory Committee. I was on the Association for American Medical Colleges Committee on the future of the Academic Medical Center. I was on the Alliance for Aging Research, the Harvard Public Health School Visiting Committee, Notre Dame's Advisory Council for Graduate School, all kinds of things in addition to this committee here. So, tremendous things I never thought would happen to me. And I'll end this, tell you a little bit about our post-retirement stuff, a little more than Paul mentioned. With probably the most incredible one, and I told the committee this a little while ago. I was sitting in the office one day, and the phone rang. I said, Dr. Gussin, I'm so-and-so from NASA. And he said, we are starting an advisory committee for the International Space Station. It's being built. So we'd like to consider you as a possible candidate. I said, I think you have the wrong person. I said, biological, biomedical scientist, I don't know anything about astronautics, aeronautics. I said, well, we know what your background is, but if you'd be willing, would you send us a CV? We'd like to consider it. So I sent it, figured it's crazy, it's never going to happen. 6 months went by, to hear me. I said, see, that was a waste of time. And I'll be darned, a couple days later, the phone rang. I said, this is so-and-so from NASA, and if you're willing, we would like to have you in this committee. It just seemed like a nice, interesting thing to do. So I went to the meeting. First meeting, you get to Washington, you had a little room. There were about 20 people sitting around the table. This is the advisory committee for the International Space Station, early in this building. And it was behind budget and all that, so they wanted an advisory committee help. So they started around the room with introduction. The first guy goes, I'm so-and-so. I'm the president of Boeing, and we're a big contractor for making the shuttles, et cetera, and space stations, so I'm here. Next guy said, I'm so-and-so, I'm the chief of the Air Force. Next guy, like, I'm so-and-so, I'm a jet fighter pilot, and I'm an astronaut. I've done 3 missions in space. Those around about 7 astronauts. There are all these people from various space corporations, et cetera. And it gets to me, and I said, told them who I was. I said, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know. So anyway, we started, and it was very interesting. I learned a lot about project management, risk management. But about the 3rd meeting, Dan Golden was the administrator of NASA, and he'd come out of industry. And he had this idea that the space station could finance itself commercially. And we wouldn't commercialize the space station. And I'd already decided, and just hearing all this stuff, what you had is an incredible laboratory opportunity. Only place you could do microgravity research. It was like a Los Alamos or Sandy or Oak Ridge, but unique. And you could do microgravity research. You look at crystallization, you look at all kinds of things and without gravity. And I said that, and they said, no, he wants to commercialize. And you come from a big company, Johnson&Johnson. Uh-oh. So we want you to be the head of the Space Commercialization Committee of NASA. I said, oh, this is great. So I said, well, I think you're making a mistake. I'm not a business guy, even though I come from a big company. No, we know that, but we think you have a big background. So I became chairman of that committee. Well, within a week, I got a call from the Italian, the French, and the German heads of their committees because they don't know what to do. And they figure, if I'm NASA, I must know how to do. So they want to come to the United States and meet with me. I said, it's like Forrest Gump. Unless I know the more people have. So anyway, this went on for a while. And we put together a little plan of, funding some stuff, hopefully that we could do in space that would be usable on the ground. But I said to them, I think now I understand why you want it here. I mean, we think we're going to make pharmaceuticals because they're a high product. And so it says, keep something in mind. At that time, it cost us $10,000 a pound to take anything up there to the space station. And so we're already getting hammered in our industry for prices. I said, we can't manufacture when it costs us $10,000 a pound for everything we put up there. The price, it's astronomical, the cost, so that's ridiculous. Well, eventually Dan Golden left, the new administrator came in, he said, no, it's a laboratory, that's what it is. So that idea went. So then they said, okay, we moved along with the space station, and it was now on track and on budget. And they said, we're going to dissolve this committee. I said, thank goodness, this is it for me. It's been fun, and I'm telling everybody, it's been great. I said, well, no, wait a minute. We're going to form a higher committee for all humans fixed plane. They said, well, that's fine, but it's sure not me. Look at all the other people in this room. And the associate administrator said, don't go over so fast. I said, you might be involved. So sure as heck, they formed this committee. A lot of those people leave, and I'm on it. All human space flight. So now we're looking at training astronauts and, all the shuttles and how we rescue people off the station and everything. And I'm thinking, what the heck am I doing here? But I love it. I mean, it was really exciting stuff. And so another administrator came eventually and he said, we're going to dissolve that. That's good. Then I'm finished. No, now we want you on the Space and Occupational Medicine Committee. Well, that made a little more sense. So I had spent a few years on that. Overall, 12 years with NASA doing this kind of stuff. I only tell the story because it's sort of strange, but it just tells you at this stage of your career and your training, you have no idea where you're going to go. But there's no limit on it. That's the nice part. And you don't have to be a genius. I struggled through this whole stuff. I didn't think, there were days I didn't think I was going to get out of here with a degree, but, good things happen. So looking back on the career, many, many things happened. we developed all kinds of, we developed a coronary artery stent, we developed the throwaway contact lenses, we developed a whole bunch of drugs during my tenure. When I retired in 2000, and the only reason I retired was in that job I was a corporate officer. Oh, and the other thing, let me back up a minute. One of the best things that happened with that job because I was in a position with enough power to recontact and reestablish close contact with my friends from here. So Jim Gibb, who was chairman of Utah, we were talking about, he said, I've got a sabbatical coming up. And we were talking, he said, I wouldn't come and spend that year with you. So he came. So one of my classmates there with me for a year. He loved it. He stayed on as a retainer consultant full time. Then Ray called. He said, you know, I have 6 months sabbatical. I wouldn't mind coming. I talked to Jim Gibb. He seemed to enjoy it. Got a lot of interesting experience. I'd like to come and do that. So Ray came. He spent 6 months. He went back to Nebraska where he was head of the cancer research group. He called me back. He said, you know what? If you have an opening, I'd like to come in full time. So he came back as full time. And when I retired, he stepped into that job, and then he had John Lazo come and do a sabbatical. So, you know, the opportunity to get your friends back with you for that time was incredible. It's one of the highlights. But anyway, the whole thing was like a dream. It really was. It was an amazing career. But it was the custom that if you're a corporate officer, you retired at 62. It wasn't mandatory, but it was customary. So I was going to be 62 that January, and my 26-year anniversary with J&J was February. So I said to Pat, you know what, I think February 1st, 2000 is a good year to retire because for those reasons, plus if I retire in 2000, I always remember how long I can retire. His mind starts to go. So she said, well, that's fine. And she said, you know what? She said, I'm not going to get up to go to work while you're sleeping or you're going out and having a good time. So I'm going to retire too. So we retired. We announced it 18 months in advance. We both retired February 1st, 2000. Everything we planned to do was face clinic, all volunteer on boards of hospitals, et cetera, et cetera. And we did all of that. But if you had said to us 5 years from now, on that day, February 1st, 2000, if you had said you're going to be writing novels, you're going to have a publishing company publishing fiction, and you're going to be growing grapes in New Zealand, we'd have probably said you better go to a psychiatric. That'd be crazy. But 5 years later, that's exactly what happened. And it happened for a lot of reasons. Pat decided once she retired, she wanted to write a novel. She started writing, started going to writers' meetings. I met a whole lot of writers who were unhappy, couldn't get published. I didn't want to write, but I was talking to all these people and wandering around these meetings with her. And I said, you know what, Pat, I think I'm going to start a publishing company. I think I can do better for 3 or 4 people than what they're getting from the publisher. Now, once again, naivety played a big role because I never thought far enough. You know, my impression was I get 3 or 4 people, I publish them, and then they go away. And then next year I get 3 or 4 people, I publish them, and I'll help them out. Well, they're like authors are like children. You know, once you have them, they don't go away. So we had 3 or 4 the first year, including Pat. Published her book, which I didn't want to do, but she insisted, which got a huge award, so it sort of got us out of the self-publisher look. But, and so the next year I got 5 authors, so now I had 9 authors, and then another 5 the following book. Now, we've been in 8 years, we've got 80 authors and over 100 books on the market, 1 movie contract, hopefully going to start shooting, 2 options, 1 for TV series, 1 for a movie. So we're unretired. I mean, it's a second thing. And we're in a totally different business. So although you're too young, students and postdocs, to give the talk about what you do when you retire, the fact is there is life after pharmacology and after science. But you've got a great career to look forward to. And don't put any limits on it. And you can't even imagine where you may end up. And hopefully you'll end up saying, I got paid for my hobby. So thank you.